Judith Shklar's Ordinary Vices, first published in 1984, is a significant work in political philosophy that shifts the traditional focus on great virtues, or heroic qualities, to a more realistic and pragmatic analysis of human flaws and vices. Shklar argues that political theory has often overlooked the ordinary vices, such as cruelty, hypocrisy, and cruelty, which have far more immediate and damaging consequences in political life than the rare virtues often idealized in classical thought. Context and motivation. In much of Western political philosophy, the discourse centers on ideals like justice, courage, and wisdom. Thinkers from Plato to Kant have typically focused on the great virtues, often abstracting from the concrete realities of everyday political behavior. Shklar challenges this approach by emphasizing the importance of the ordinary vices that permeate human behavior and political life. Her work emerges against the backdrop of 20th century political turmoil, totalitarianism, ideological fanaticism, and the persistence of cruelty and injustice despite lofty ideals. Shklar asks, why have these ordinary vices such as cruelty, cowardice, hypocrisy, and betrayal not received more systematic attention in political thought? She suggests that by understanding these vices, political philosophy can better respond to the real challenges societies face. The central thesis. At the core of Ordinary Vices is the claim that cruelty is the worst political vice, and that ordinary vices are more damaging and more common than the heroic virtues that political philosophy traditionally extols. Shklar insists on a realistic perspective on politics, one that starts with an understanding of human fallibility rather than idealized moral excellence. She argues that political philosophy should be more pragmatic, grounded in the actual behavior of political agents, rather than abstract theorizing about perfect justice or moral purity. Her focus on the ordinary highlights how everyday behaviors and attitudes, when multiplied across society and institutionalized, cause profound harm. The concept of cruelty as the worst vice. Judith Shklar places cruelty at the center of her analysis. For her, cruelty is the deliberate infliction of pain and suffering on others, not as a means to an end, but as an end in itself, or an expression of domination. She argues that cruelty destroys trust, corrodes social bonds, and undermines the foundations of political community. Unlike other vices, cruelty is not just a moral failing, but a political evil. It is the exercise of power to degrade, humiliate, or harm others unnecessarily. Shklar's concern with cruelty is not abstract or philosophical, but deeply rooted in historical realities, from the abuses of authoritarian regimes to everyday acts of humiliation. She famously states, "Cruelty is the worst thing we do." For Shklar, preventing cruelty should be the primary task of political institutions and ethics. Other ordinary vices. Besides cruelty, Shklar analyzes a range of other ordinary vices that are socially and politically destructive. Hypocrisy. The dissonance between what one says and what one does, especially in public life. Hypocrisy erodes trust and makes political discourse less sincere and reliable. Betrayal, a violation of trust, often personal, but with political ramifications, especially when leaders or institutions betray the people they are supposed to serve. Cowardice, failure to stand up against injustice or wrongdoing, often out of fear. Cowardice allows cruelty and other vices to flourish unchallenged. Envy, resentment of others' success or possessions, which can drive divisiveness and social conflict. Corruption, abuse of entrusted power for private gain, undermining the legitimacy and fairness of political institutions. Shklar shows how these vices interrelate and collectively degrade the moral fabric of societies. The political importance of ordinary vices. Shklar insists that political theory has largely ignored ordinary vices because it has been overly focused on ideals and principles such as justice and virtue. By contrast, ordinary vices are more practical to address and more relevant to the lived experience of politics. For example, efforts to curb cruelty or hypocrisy have immediate effects on the quality of political life. Tackling corruption, exposing hypocrisy, and protecting individuals from cruelty improve trust and cohesion. Shklar's approach is grounded in political realism and liberalism. She recognizes that human beings are imperfect, and societies should design institutions that minimize harm and injustice caused by ordinary vices rather than hoping for heroic virtue. Liberalism and the defense against cruelty. One of the key implications of Shklar's work is her defense of liberalism as a political philosophy primarily aimed at preventing cruelty. For Shklar, liberalism is not just about promoting freedom or equality in some abstract sense. Its defining value is protection against cruelty and arbitrary power. This view places the prevention of cruelty as the moral foundation of liberal institutions, including the rule of law, constitutionalism, and human rights protections. Shklar is skeptical of grand ideological visions or utopian projects that overlook the danger of cruelty. Instead, she champions a cautious, pluralistic, and pragmatic politics designed to limit suffering and respect human dignity. Methodology, and style. Ordinary Vices is not a dry theoretical treatise, but rather a work rich in historical and literary examples. Shklar draws from a variety of sources, including political history, literature, and philosophical tradition, to illustrate how ordinary vices manifest and their effects on political life. Her style is accessible and direct, emphasizing the importance of confronting the realities of human behavior honestly, rather than resorting to moral idealism. Impact and legacy. Judith Shklar's Ordinary Vices has had a lasting influence on political philosophy and theory. By focusing on the dark side of human nature and everyday political wrongs, Shklar has inspired a more realistic and grounded approach to understanding politics. Her work complements and challenges other strains of political thought, such as the emphasis on justice, John Rawls, power and domination, Michel Foucault, or virtue ethics, Alasdair MacIntyre. Scholars have used Shklar's framework to analyze contemporary issues such as state violence, political hypocrisy, corruption, and the challenges of liberal democracy. Summary of key points. 1. Shift from virtues to vices. Shklar redirects political theory's attention from ideal virtues to common vices, arguing that ordinary vices shape political realities more than rare virtues. 2. Cruelty as central vice. Cruelty is the worst political vice, involving deliberate harm without justification, destroying social trust and political order. 3. Range of ordinary vices. Hypocrisy, betrayal, cowardice, envy, and corruption are all significant vices that undermine politics. 4. Pragmatic political philosophy. Political theory should be realistic and focus on minimizing harm caused by vices rather than pursuing utopian ideals. 5. Liberalism's purpose. The prevention of cruelty is the moral core of liberalism and its political institutions. 6. Historical and literary examples. Shklar illustrates her points with concrete examples, grounding theory in practice. Why ordinary vices matters today. In an era marked by political polarization, rising authoritarianism, and public distrust, Shklar's analysis remains highly relevant. Her insistence on confronting cruelty, hypocrisy, and betrayal as political realities calls for vigilance in protecting democratic institutions. The rise of social media and disinformation can exacerbate ordinary vices, especially hypocrisy and betrayal, making Shklar's insights crucial for contemporary political analysis. Moreover, her pragmatic liberalism offers a path forward that balances realism with moral concern, stressing protections against cruelty over ideological purity.